We're interrupting our scheduled program to take you live to the campaign trail of election 2016.
Deliver bigger deficits than those outlined in the pre-election economic and fiscal outlook. That would put Australia's AAA credit rating at risk, which would be bad for the economy and which would drive up cost of borrowings across Australia. So this is not the time to take risks and to go back to the same old Labor, which delivered record deficits over the past 6 years in government. The coalition has a comprehensive national economic plan for jobs and growth, with all of our commitments funded and guaranteed within our budget. Happy to take questions.
Minister, how can taxpayers have confidence that they're not indirectly joining the Liberal Party through this outfit called Parac-Yulia?
Well, the work expenses arrangements that you referred to apply equally to all members of Parliament across the board, and I think you'll find that the arrangements that are accessed in terms of the relevant software by Liberal members and senators are the same as those accessed by Labor members and senators, and indeed are accessible by all members of Parliament on the same basis.
But why is Parac-Yulia giving back to the Liberal Party $500,000 last year?
Well, I mean, again, as I've indicated, work expenses arrangements are the same for all members of Parliament. If you've got questions on organisational matters, I would refer you to the organisation.
But do you rule out taxpayers' money going back to the Liberal Party through this act?
Well, again, what I can say to you is that the work expenses arrangements for all members of Parliament, including when it comes to accessing relevant software support, are the same for all members of Parliament on all sides of politics. They're the same for Labor members and senators as they are for Liberal members and senators, and indeed you'll find that there are similar arrangements available and accessible for members and senators across the board.
It should be said that Parac-Yulia doesn't generate a profit from this office allowance. How can the Liberal Party know that and guarantee that?
Well, I mean, again, as I've said, work expenses arrangements are available and accessible for all members and senators across the board on the same basis. There is access to certain software support that is required in order for members and senators to be able to do their job, to service their constituents, whether that is for Labor members and senators or Liberal members and senators. I mean, these types of work expenses arrangements are the same. And if you've got any specific inquiries in relation to the organisational aspects of that, I would refer you to the organisation.
Labor and Senate will support the tax cuts for small business under $2 million. The Prime Minister himself has been quite dismissive of that. Last year, that was the core of your budget, giving tax cuts to small business, Tony's Tradies and other such slogans. Why is it so different now? Why is it so bad that they would support that?
Well, firstly, last year we always said that that was the tax cut that we delivered to businesses with a turnover of less than $2 million in last year's budget. It was always a first step. We were very clear about that. We said last year that we would like to be able to do more and that we would do more as soon as we were able to accommodate that in the budget. And in this year's budget, we have been able to lay out our 10-year enterprise tax plan with at its core a more competitive business tax rate, obviously as part of our national economic plan for jobs and growth. And you got to remember, none other than Ken Henry, Dr. Ken Henry, as the former Secretary of the Treasury, made very clear that the principal beneficiaries of a more competitive company tax rate, a lower company tax rate, would be workers. And the other thing I would say to you is that none other than Bill Shorten used to criticise this sort of approach of limiting a lower company tax rate to smaller businesses of less than $2 million, because that used to be the Greens' position at some point in the past. And Bill Shorten, if I refer you to a speech he gave at a conference in March 2011 at ACOS, he explained very eloquently why it is bad policy to limit a lower corporate tax rate just to the smallest businesses. And what is done now, Bill Shorten has done in relation to a more competitive company tax rate, the same as he's done on so many things. He's taken the Labor Party towards the Greens position, because Labor and the Greens in this campaign are at one in pursuing an anti-business, anti-success, anti-investment, anti-jobs and growth agenda, which is not in Australia's national interest. Bill Shorten, on 1 July 2016, wants to deny 100,000 small and medium-sized businesses, 100,000 businesses with a turnover between $2 million and $10 million a year, a tax cut. These businesses employ 2.2 million Australians. We want them to be more successful so they can employ more Australians, so they can pay those Australians better wages over time. We understand that for individual Australians to be the most successful they can be, we need Australian businesses that employ them to be the most successful they can be. And a more competitive business tax rate helps to achieve that. Bill Shorten used to understand that. He's walked away from his past statements in relation to this, not because he believes that his position today is right, but because he thinks it's in his political interest in the context of a pre-election period. He's pursuing a political agenda despite knowing full well that our plan for a more competitive business tax rate is actually in the national interest and is important for our economy moving forward.
Do you agree with the arguments put in the second Andrew Hastie over his campaign?
Andrew Hastie is an outstanding Member of Parliament. He's provided distinguished service to Australia as an SAS soldier, including in Afghanistan, before joining the Parliament. It is entirely appropriate for Andrew Hastie to present himself to his constituents in the context of an election campaign, putting forward his life story. And obviously, his distinguished service as part of the SAS forces, including in Afghanistan, is part of his history. So, obviously, I think that Andrew Hastie has been very clear in making relevant statements in this regard as well. Well, again, I strongly support Andrew Hastie's decision to present himself to his constituents in this election, putting forward what is part of his life history. And his distinguished service as part of our military is part of his life history. And, obviously, Andrew Hastie has made relevant judgments along those lines. Well, Andrew Hastie is an outstanding member who is providing great service to the people of Canning. He has a bright future, making a significant contribution to Australia in the federal parliament for many years to come. He's presenting himself at this election, obviously for re-election as the member for Canning. It is entirely appropriate for him to present himself, putting forward what he's done in the past in order to ensure that people in Canning have a good appreciation of who he is and what he's done, and what he will be able to contribute for them in the federal parliament in the years ahead. Now, Andrew Hastie has made the right decision, in my view. I support him 100% in the judgments that he has made. Obviously, the decisions that the Defence Force have made are a matter for them.
Oxfam, I couldn't bring it. I was looking today that shows that about $9 billion each year is in foregone revenue through multinational tax evasion. There's also a survey with that which shows it's 90% of people think the government should, or a government should tighten up the rules. Now, I know you've put forward some legislation, but doesn't it worry you that there is a perception that you're not doing enough?
We are cracking down on tax avoidance wherever there is any tax avoidance. We have a very strong and comprehensive plan to tackle multinational tax avoidance. We are taking action domestically. We are taking action internationally through the G20 and the OECD. We are absolutely committed to making sure that every business that generates profits in Australia pays tax in Australia consistent with our laws. We passed legislation before Christmas last year, against the opposition, incidentally, of the Labor Party to increase the powers of the tax commissioner and to increase relevant penalties. We've built on that with a whole series of additional measures in this year's budget, including a diverted profits tax and various other measures, all designed to ensure that every single business in Australia that generates profits here in Australia pays tax in Australia consistent with our laws. We understand that it is very important for the taxpayers around Australia to be able to have confidence in the integrity of the system, to have confidence that everyone pays their fair share of tax consistent with our laws. All right? Thank you very much.